I like outdoor stadiums still more than indoor stadiums, but I just wanted to address, I mean, that stadium, beautiful. I expect there to be, has it hosted a Super Bowl? Did it host a Super Bowl? I would expect eventually one day it hosts a Super Bowl.
Levi?
Oh. Yeah.
I thought it did.
Did it? Am I missing, am I forgetting that it hosted a Super Bowl?
I swear it did. If not,
think
it's
it did. I
it's
think
bound
it did.
to. Yeah.
If it hasn't,
Super Bowl 50.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. It's a great stadium. I think that it might even work its way into the rotation of the college football playoff because those stadiums all right now, other than the Rose Bowl, are all sort of east southeast and kind of benefit those SEC teams. I mean, we saw in LSU beating Clemson in the national championship game. It was so dominant in the LSU presence because it's 50 miles or whatever it is away from the campus, which of course, you don't predict that LSU goes to the title game. And let's say that the national championship is, Oregon versus Ohio State. And then nobody really has a benefit no matter really where the stadium is, unless Lucas Oil hosts one. But I really like the stadium and I really liked just like everything about it. I like that Illinois got to, venture out to California and get to play in some beautiful weather against an opponent that they most likely wouldn't see. And sort of similarly to the LSU national championship game, Cal got sort of a almost home game, but Illinois fans still traveled with enough confidence that when those calls that Brendyn alluded to didn't go Illinois' way over and over and over again, the fans in orange really let the Zebras hear it, and as they should, because there were some pretty bad calls in that game. The Brandon Peters not first down, that wasn't a first down.
Yeah, that was insane.
That was one of the craziest. Like, if you would have showed a 5 or 6 year old, did he get this first down and they didn't know any other rules of football, you just say you just have to get past this orange part, they would be like, yeah. But it also comes down to the, if you jump out of bounds, where are you truly in the field of play and whatnot. But did you guys expect Illinois to maybe win this game though? Because I still felt like Illinois had, a shot. I know that they were thin on numbers, on the line without Kramer and without Hansen, with no Bebe and plenty of guys missing, but I still felt like Illinois could have won this game and went in with the attitude of that.
Yeah, no, I feel like with the defensive schemes that they're able to run in the second half of the season and how they were able to limit teams and take the ball away. We saw in Michigan they were down however many points. I don't think this Illinois team with the defense they have is ever really out of a game. Mm-hmm. But it did just seem like it was so stacked against them from the beginning.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Like, you had hope going in, but things I feel like turned pretty quickly.
The big thing was you didn't get that turnover.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think I haven't done the research, so I bring this up without having any sort of real, gusto behind it. But when Illinois turned the ball, like if Illinois turned the ball over, obviously when they won the turnover margin, mm-hmm. I think they were 6-1 or something along those lines. But even in games that they got turnovers at all, I mean, the games that Illinois really didn't stand a chance in is they didn't get turnovers. They didn't really stand a chance because of that. In the Wisconsin game, you win because you win the turnover differential. In the Michigan State game, you win because you get those turnovers. And that was what this defense was able to do during that 4-game winning streak. And you didn't really get that out of the defense. But I think this is the biggest positive I'm taking away from this game is Brandon Peters. Mm-hmm. I think, he goes 22 for 37. He is kind of relied on to throw a lot in this game because, Illinois goes up in the first quarter, but then they're down at halftime and they don't score a point in the third quarter. And then as that second half wears on, you start going, wanting more and more out of your quarterback. So he's forced to throw the ball 37 times, gets 273 yards, 1 touchdown. He has the interception, which really wasn't a good interception at all, but you'll live with it because they knew he was throwing and he had to throw. And his ability to use his legs. He had 68 yards on the ground, averaged 8.5 yards a carry, and that includes the times that he loses yards. And that dive at the end, I mean, that we just talked about, showed his will to win and just the Big Ten quarterback that he was, that hopefully shut up anybody that thought that, he's just not it. And Brandon Peters isn't the answer. And why aren't we playing Isaiah Williams and all these things? Because Brandon Peters has another year of eligibility now. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of turnover with, pretty much losing every running back that contributed this season and going to have to rely on the Jakari Norwoods, Ravon Bonner, and some of the new guys that are going to come and be, faces and names that we hear of more often.
Mike Epstein, if he's healthy.
Yeah, Mike Epstein, if he's healthy. And that's such a big if. But then so you lose a lot of that. But for receivers, I mean, you keep most of the contributors. I mean, in this game, you have Donnie Navarro and Daniel Barker and some of these guys. And the seniors, even the seniors that were the receivers, you still get Bebe and you still have these guys that have eligibility left. So the offense for the most part stays put together. You're adding Luke Ford as a tight end into that offense, which will be so huge. And you lose a lineman here or there, but the defense is where I'm really concerned about the losses, because you do lose a decent amount on defense, and that is, this defense wasn't great all year. And now you're asking, for this defense to turn around and be at least what this defense was. And at the beginning of the year, what this defense was in our eyes was not good at all.
Yeah, no, definitely. Especially with, I think a big thing was that helped the defense in the second half of the season was the defensive line's ability to get that pressure. And Batiku was a huge part of that. And him declaring for the draft wasn't expected. I would not have called that at all. Good for him. I think hopefully he'll be able to, especially in the combine, like teams will look at him. I mean, he's a huge guy. He has that potential. I just didn't expect. I don't think anybody really expected it. But yeah, I think Lovey really has to look at this team and see how he can capitalize on the people that are coming back, on Nate Hobbs, on Milo Eifler, on all these guys that are coming back and have been through the rough parts of this defense, but have also been there when the defense has been really good.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up Nate Hobbs, who had 9 tackles in the game against Cal and also had a pass deflected. You have Colin Tolson, and you lose Dele Harding and guys like him, and Batiku, who was unexpected. But I don't know. It's a long ways away, and I bring up Illinois football in this sort of opening segment just because we haven't talked about them, and they did dominate our radio waves all the way through the fall, and then we have this long break that we don't even really think about it, and Illinois basketball plays to a level that makes us so you haven't thought about the football team and the positives to take away from this season. You lose your D-line coach, who's headed to the NFL, joins the Miami Dolphins staff. There's some people that are saying that he's sort of they see he's a coaching mind that the NFL is really going to benefit from, and that he may be somebody in the future to keep an eye on and whatnot. I would like to see Lovey at a defensive coordinator, just because I think that he does a great job for the most part, but also if you want to keep advancing, I think you got to bring in some second opinions and some other guys that can check you, and maybe they think that the choice you're making, might not be on, the same page and that sort of thing. But I don't know. I wanted to talk a little bit about Illinois football just because it had been so long since we talked about them, and since they played in a bowl game, in the Red Box Bowl, and it may be not it's not whatever. It's not the Rose Bowl. Yeah, it's not even the Gator Bowl. It's or anything, but it's something. I'm not going to go down the list that it's not this, it's not that, because I don't want to diminish the accomplishment of the football team, because this is a team that nobody expected to be a bowl team, really. I mean, they thought 6 wins was the ceiling, and of course they come to 6 wins, and in that regard, I guess they hit the ceiling, but also, after the Michigan game, after the Nebraska game, there was low moments this season, and they were able to overcome that, push out all the noise, and make it so that they were in California for a week, and that's something that half the teams in the nation don't get to say, that they get to play that 7th or 13th game and get that extra week of practice. So good for our Illinois Fighting Illini. Good for them to get out there and that game. We're going to stay on the Illini, but switch over to basketball when we come back from our break, because Illinois got a big game against Minnesota. They return home with a number 19 ranking, and I know a lot of fans are going to be excited to see them and listen to them and watch them wherever they do. So stick right with us. We'll be right back on Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1. And welcome back to Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1. Illinois basketball, number 19 in the nation, taking on Minnesota at home tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. If you want to watch that game, can't get tickets. It's on FS1, but you can get tickets. I know this for a fact, because the first thing that I seen about Illinois selling out is the game against Indiana on March 1st, which I don't know the last time that Illinois basketball had a sellout. Definitely wasn't this last. Had to be like 9-10 years ago.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We don't need to speculate.
For as long as I've covered basketball, I have not been to a sellout game.
And I covered the Rutgers game over break, and that was as close as I've seen to a sellout. It was about a 85%, 90% capacity at its absolute best. They saw an ugly game against Rutgers, but That was the last time Illinois, or then they played Northwestern that weekend too at home. But now Illinois returns home after conquering Purdue in Mackey, Michigan at Michigan. Io DeSumo comes up clutch against Michigan. He's been balling recently, and that's who Minnesota's going to have to stop. I mean, Io's averaging 16 points a game. He's shooting almost 49% from the field. He's an 82% free throw shooter. If you stop the guards, you got problems down low because Kofi Coburn's right there. He's averaging 9 rebounds a game, almost 14 points a game, 3.5 offensive rebounds a game, which I think is phenomenal. What is the strength of this Illinois team? Because we see I feel like a different variation, game in and game out, and you see the team that likes to get out on the break, and sometimes you see the team that likes to slow down, and obviously Io and Kofi are sort of the two-headed monster leading the way right now. But I'm curious what your guys' thoughts on what this team's strength is.
That's a really good question.
Yeah, I like that.
I would say versatility. I think that, and I know that's kind of a bogus answer, but like I feel like Io can score, Kofi can score, Trent Frazier can score when he needs to, but they're also all accepting their role. Like you see nights where Kofi goes, against whoever they just played, it's blanking, but he had 5 points, and Michigan, he 5 points and he fouled out. But that's when, or times like Io steps up. In the beginning of the year when Io was kind of fading, you saw Kofi step up. There's nights where Trent Frazier scores however many, but there's nights where he doesn't score a lot, and then he has a lot of assists and no turnovers. Alan Griffin can. There's just so many players on this team that can step up when they're needed to, when they're needed to. So I think that it's hard to stop this Illinois team because they can come at you from any position, from any person off the bench, in the starters, whatever.
I think, like, to Brendyn's point, he said both, but I think like a better word for that might be like their adaptability.
Yeah.
Like their ability to, depending on who they're playing, make that game plan, stick with it, and then make that other team kind of play their, like, Illinois' game. I mean, like, look at what happened against Purdue, and like you get that blowout like that, but then look at Rutgers and you're able to like slug out an ugly game like that. I think this team is very adaptable, and to Brendyn's point of who steps up when, I mean, obviously closing with Io is the biggest strength probably, but also it's Trent playing defense and it's Kofi just dominating the block. So it depends on the matchup, I feel like.
And so going into this Minnesota game, we talk about matchups. Minnesota's also got a phenomenal center in Oturu. I think he's one of the better players in the entire Big Ten. He's averaging 19.7 points per game. He's shooting around 60%. I mean, even for a big man, those are great numbers.
Brad called him a lottery pick this morning.
I would not be surprised.
No, he's also shooting 40% from three. Oh no, he's shooting something like great for three for a 6'10" guy. Like he's really good. We talked about
40%. That's really good.
It's some stat I'm looking at.
He's 70% from free throws, which I mean for a big man.
I mean, this is honestly, I think, a proven ground for Kofi. Like I think this is probably the best center he's played against that I can remember in this season. And Brad Underwood called this guy a lottery pick. So if Kofi wants to maybe explore the draft this summer, he's going to have to show up big. He can't have a Michigan game. And that's because I don't think anybody but Kofi on this team will be able to contain Oturu. So, he also gets 2 blocks a game or 2.5 blocks a game. Like, I mean, this guy is just crazy good. So, if Illinois wants to be able to stand a chance, they have to be able to contain him.
Yeah, so he's shooting 30% from three, 30%. which even for where that is, that's still phenomenal for a big man, especially when you're not relied on for that at all. Where I see Illinois being able to, okay, I'll go back to that. A lot of people talked about Kofi at the beginning of this year as if he was a lottery pick because of what he was doing early on when he was consistently getting double-doubles. And I mean, he still is averaging close to a double-double, but we saw games like Michigan. We saw games like Purdue when he just was sort of slowed down a little bit. We've seen games that he gets in foul trouble. He fouls out of the Michigan game. And we keep using Michigan as an example. Believe that as much as the Michigan game was a lot of worries coming to fruition, it was not. It was nobody that was covering this team was blind to a game like that. Everybody predicted, if everything goes wrong, that's what you get out of a game. You get 5 points and you foul out and whatnot. He still played good defense, and that's the thing is he's always going to be a good defender. Whether or not he's getting the blocks, he bothers people at the rim. He makes it so you have to clutch a layup, or you have to think again about the opportunity of taking a shot. looking at scouting Minnesota a little bit, where I see Illinois can take advantage is if they get Minnesota into foul trouble, because other than Minnesota's starting five, nobody really scores for this team. Because, if you are just sort of blindly going through, okay, let's see how good Minnesota is, and you see, okay, Oturu averages 19.7, Carr has 16.1, they got two other guards, they got 12, that averages 9, and their other forward averages 8, but then as soon as you look at that bench, nobody's scoring more than 4 points a game. And as much as people talked about Illinois' bench at the beginning of this year, and of course Illinois' bench has been sort of, fluid in a way that, maybe Alan Griffin should be getting starter minutes, and Feliz starting at the beginning of the year, but then DeMonte Williams gets subbed in because Brad just likes the way that he fits in more with that starting lineup. Allen gets 8.4 points a game, and Kipper's had better points recently. I mean, his points per game total is still lower, but that's because he hasn't really gotten the minutes that he's gotten until recently. And of course, we know DeMonte doesn't score, so right there, Andre's coming off the bench gives you 10.5, unless put him in the starting lineup, then that's that. But Illinois has a little bit more balance than Minnesota does, and Illinois is very similar to Minnesota, where they have the good center and the good guard. They've got Oturu and Carr, the same way that Illinois has Coburn and Dosunmu. So I see very similar styles of plays, and that's why when I come around to thinking about how this game's going to go, I have to think about the status quo in the Big Ten, is that this Illinois crowd is going to be raucous. And students are excited, coming back to school. This is the first game that they've had a chance to go to since coming back from winter break. A lot of people are trying to go to this game. The students are going to show out in full force. The fans are going to show out in full force because all of a sudden, this team isn't playing Rutgers and Minnesota and Northwestern and hanging on that bubble of are they ranked. They are firmly ranked and with a lot of hype around them, especially by that man, Andy Katz, who has fought all the way back in on Illinois. Today, naming them the second team that you don't want to see in the tournament, whatever the heck that means. And you're looking further at Illinois' bench. Brendyn Jones obviously doesn't play in a lot of the games at the beginning of the year. Underwood has his suspension against him, isn't happy with the way that he, was doing things off the court or whatnot. Tev could come in and get you a bucket anytime that you want. That he is a natural scorer.
He's also going to foul 4 times in 6 minutes.
Yeah.
That's true, but I think he also hasn't had a lot of time to get his rhythm since he hasn't really played for however many. What game was it last year that he put up?
Maryland.
Maryland.
Yeah, Brendyn Jones in NBA arenas is like all Big Ten first team.
Exactly. But the thing I think that's going to hurt, this team is that Alan Griffin's still out. It's super tough that he got that 2-game suspension because as Nathan said, this Minnesota can't really rely on their bench, and that's something that Illinois has been able to do when their starters can't contribute. So losing his 8 points a game off the bench, these starters are going to have to make sure that they come out shooting. They're going to have to come out at a good pace, and they're going to have to be able to maintain that.
Over the last 6 games, the 6-game winning streak that Illinois is on, I would assume was averaging 17 points a game. That's kind of consistent with his season as a whole, but man, he is, I think, really what has taken Illinois to the next level. And I just like to go to just appreciate Io right now, because this is a guy that we thought and people talked about going to the NBA draft last year, and it took him a while before he made the call. And then he makes that hype video that he says, I got unfinished business, that we've got unfinished business that we got to take care of. Let's get after it. And I love that out of him. And I love that we're seeing that out of him, and that we're seeing that just, that competitor's edge that he is bringing to the games, and his willingness to close games out, and just how hard he's working to this is something that I thought about with when you have a star player, is when somebody's taking the last shot, if the other team is more nervous than you are, that's how you know that you're really that you're really got you somebody to close the game. That's how people felt about people felt about Kobe. People felt about all these other guys that are legendary for hitting those great shots at the end of the game. Name it, Jordan or whoever. And that's what I was starting to feel like in the Big Ten is he's going to come into your arena and he's going to give you 15 plus, and then the game's going to be close at the end of the game, or game's going to be close, and he's going to hit the shot. And then and when he hits the shot, let's say there's time left on the clock. If you want to go inside, you've got Kofi and Georgie, great defenders, and you got Trent guarding your best player, probably DeMonte out there guarding maybe your best player, maybe your best cutter, whatever it is, because of the effort that he gives. And it's it's just so nice. It's just so nice to have a number one option and to have the role, and to imagine 2 years ago when he was a freshman to tell Trent Frazier he's going to be a role player, but to see him embrace that so much, be so committed to, I'm going to play great defense. He's averaging almost a steal a game, which is not easy to do. He doesn't turn the ball over. He's a great option as the point guard when Io's sitting out, and the structure of this team is great. I imagine they handled Minnesota.
Yeah.
Not handle to the point that they really take care of them, but I believe in this team now to the point that I think with 5 minutes to go in the game, Illinois should be up 5 or 6 points, and you feel comfortable about their ability to just get the job done. Am I misguided, or how do you guys feel about sort of how this team and how this game should go?
I get the confidence, and I get being able to say, like, oh, this team should handle Minnesota, because Minnesota is in that second, third tier of the Big Ten, where, I mean, if you want to call Michigan State and Illinois probably the top tier, and then the second tier being like...
That was awesome.
Yeah, right.
That's top tier.
But then
crazy.
like that second tier being like, I mean, at this point, Purdue and Ohio State, and then
Iowa.
Iowa in that second tier as well. Iowa maybe pushing that first tier if you want as well.
Yeah.
And then Maryland, and then you have like, I think Minnesota's probably that third-ish tier, and then obviously the bottom being like Nebraska and Northwestern. But handle, especially with Oturu, is very scary for me to say. And, it's just, I don't know, it's scary because we've been burned before by getting too overconfident with Illinois, and I don't think they're overconfident. I think we as the media and like we're feeling really good about this team. Obviously, first time being ranked in forever, and they're on this win streak, which win streaks always feel good. But I just don't want this game to be a trap game. I feel like
I understand the worry, and Illinois, they haven't played. They haven't played since Saturday. It doesn't. It's not a while, but it feels like a while just because it feels like a lifetime has passed since Saturday. So I get that worry, but I also think that this team's mentality is beyond that. There's they asked Io if he's happy about 19, and he's like no, because their record and their ranking doesn't matter to them. And they asked Io if some teams have called them the surprise of the year, and I was like, we're not surprised at all. We put in the work over summer, and even though I feel like we are tailored as Illinois fans to hold our, excitement in check.
yeah.
But this team and this team has given us reason with the Miami game and the Missouri game to be like, yeah, we've seen why we hold our excitement in check. But man, I can't help but feel that page has been turned, and I can't help but feel that this team understands about the grind of the Big Ten, and that Underwood will not let them slack off, and that if a half like Miami's first half happens again, that the next man up attitude will carry to, Tev, who would love to get minutes right now.
Yeah.
If it has to be Jermaine Hamlin, if it has to be DeMonte, actually coming and scoring in the game and being relied on. I think that there's a attitude around this team that they understand that it's a grind, and that, you got to hold serve at home. So let's go ahead and do predictions before we take our last break. I got 72-65 Illinois wins. I really do believe. I think that this game is sort of Illinois leads by 9-7 the whole time. Maybe Minnesota makes a run, makes things nervous. Underwood calls a timeout. Illinois gets back in the groove of things. And I just feel good. So I want to call like a certain player, and I want to call I want to call the Trent Frazier game because we haven't seen the Trent Frazier game, and I feel like we're due.
With that,
but those are usually road games.
With that, Trent's not that guy anymore.
Nobody can be.
He can be, but he knows he isn't. Like, Trent is the defensive guy, will hit a big three to get the offense going, and will hit that, like, initial thing to get the ball rolling. But he's not that guy that is just going to, like, if he's feeling it, I'm sure, like, yeah, they'll keep feeding him, and he can be. But I just don't think we're at the point, and he's at the point in his career here now where we're going to see that Trent 30 ball anymore.
But do you think if he needs to, he won't? Like, I feel like if Io's struggling, if Kofi can't score against, Oturu, and Trent's like, all right, I got to do something. You're like, we saw it when he broke that record. Like, he was on fire in that first half. And, like, if he's able to put two halves together like that, and he, like, needs to, and the team needs him, including with playing good defense and including with not turning the ball over, like, I feel like it could easily happen. Like, that's just how good his jump shot is.
I'm calling Trent Frazier over 18 points.
Wow.
Okay.
That's I want to call it Trent Frazier game, but I feel like the Trent Frazier game is like a 25-point game.
Yeah.
I don't know. Something feels good about. I think Trent's going to come home, and the home crowd's going to be here, and all the students going to be around.
It's going to be crazy. I mean, most of these students haven't seen a game since last time we covered a game, which
and this
was
is the first time they're home where they're ranked.
Yeah. How the campus was after the Michigan win.
Exactly.
What people that were out, and just people's Snapchat stories, Instagram stories, what people were texting each other. I got friends from other school being like, "Man, you guys are legit," and it's like, I know, right?
Isn't that cool?
All right, let's hear it. Predictions.
The line's at 4.5. I'm going to go Illinois 67-62.
All righty.
I think it's you got to slug it out. I think Ochuru makes it really tough at the end, but
he's really good.
I think you get there.
Got to get him in foul trouble. I feel like that's going to be a key is try to get low and try to body up with him. And if you got an uncontested look, take it. But I think Kofi and Georgie need to work on him a little bit and try to, if you can't, try to get those 3 fouls in the first half, because then you take him out a little bit of the first half and whatnot. But
that's fair.
I think that's a goal.
Yeah.
I think another goal is to make sure that Kofi himself doesn't get into foul trouble. I mean,
fair.
he can play aggressive, and we saw it with Georgie last year. I mean, you move up in any level of the game, it's going to be harder to play defense, and you're going to want to be aggressive. But they call fouls. If he is able to limit himself, and he's not he doesn't have to take those restricted minutes that come with foul trouble, I think it'll be great. I think they'll win. I'm calling 73-69.
Nice. Alex?
Give me 65-60.
All right, a little bit lower.
Was expecting him to be like Minnesota.
Right. I wanted to say it so bad, but I don't believe it.
Nah, man, I'm not that. Well, I'm still that person. But, I mean, this team's just gotten better, and it's so refreshing to see, man.
Alex is waiting for the away games.
He is.
He's like,
a little bit.
At Iowa.
He's
Dude,
Iowa.
he was looking I've been eyeing that Iowa game for so long, dude.
And okay, we actually aren't going to be around for the Iowa game because that's Super Bowl Sunday.
Oh, it is. Can we talk about it a little bit?
We need to take a break.
Okay.
And when we come back, real quick, we'll talk about Iowa just in the briefest of moment, and then we can hear Alex be pessimistic, and we can all get mad at him. And it'll be fun. So stick with us. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1. Illini Drive is brought to you by University of Illinois Division of Intercollegiate Athletics. FightingIllini.com. Make sure to go out and buy some tickets for the game against Minnesota on this Thursday, and then a fun week against Maryland and Minnesota and Michigan State the following week. Make sure to go get your tickets on FightingIllini.com. Unify, develop, inspire, and achieve. Quickly, Iowa game. At Iowa, number 18 Iowa on Super Bowl Sunday. We all agree there should be no sports on Super Bowl Sunday other than football, so that everybody can get together and have one last candlelit funeral for football and as the season goes down. But the nice thing is that it's not at the same time as the Super Bowl. So you can watch this game, you can watch Illinois hopefully win, and then turn around and, whether you got the Chiefs or the 49ers, you can enjoy that as well. Yeah, Luka Garza's got the most punchable face in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
I think him or Matt Harms is something that we all agree.
I think
they're a good team.
What gives Harms the take, it gives Harms the cake in that is his hair. I hate his hair. I can't do it.
It's feathered and lethal cotton. Garza's just got. So we were talking about this. I mean, he's got such good numbers that he could go to the draft. I mean, 23 points per game, 10 rebounds, over 10 rebounds a game, almost 11, 55% field goal percentage. Obviously, he's a big man. Those field goal percentages are a little bit inflated, but good free throw shooter. He can step out if he really needs to. I mean, this Iowa team is a really good team. Both these teams are riding 5+ game win streaks with wins on the road. Yeah, they're a good team. I don't know what to make of Iowa just quite yet. Yeah. I haven't watched enough Iowa. What are your guys' thoughts? I think this is a winnable game for Illinois, but I still just know how tough it is to win on the road in the Big Ten.
I just remember the games from last year where Iowa would shoot the lights out, and there was nothing that Illinois defense from last year could do. But we've seen them totally change, how they approach defense, and they've been so good defending the three in this stretch of wins. So hopefully that helps. I think, we know how much of a competitor Kofi is when he sees arguably the best center in the Big Ten, with a punchable face on the other side. He's going to want to dunk on him every single time. which I'm so excited for. I hope he dunks on him like 8 times.
Are we creating a rivalry, like a player-to-player rivalry?
I'm
out
good
of
with
nothing
it.
right
I'm
now.
good with it. Down with Luka Garza.
Kofi Coburn, if you are listening right now, I need you to dunk on him 5 times at least. And if you don't,
And
well,
flex
I
on
can't do anything. But like, I would be very,
This
very
man
sad.
not gonna do
I
a
would be
body,
very
but
sad.
I will be sad, but I will still probably say nice things about you.
I will always say nice things about Kofi.
This Iowa team showed how good they could be beginning of this year when they take down Texas Tech. The game's at home. And then they turn around and they lose right away to San Diego State. Then again, that's a team nobody's been able to beat yet. They're unranked at the time. In their early stretch of the Big Ten season, the 2 games they play before winter break, they lost at the time, a really hot Michigan team, and then took care of business against Minnesota, winning that game by 20. The rest of their non-conference, they took care of business. Dropped some early games again, at home against Penn State, and then at Nebraska. That at Nebraska loss is bad because Nebraska is not good at all. But then they go on this 5-game win streak. They win against Maryland. They win at Northwestern. They win against Michigan. They win against Rutgers. They win against Wisconsin. The only thing that tells me that this team might be frauds is that all of those games were at home except Northwestern. Yeah. And Northwestern is beatable in Northwestern because they're Northwestern and they're not a good team. So this Iowa team is going to face struggles as the season progresses because of the amount of away games they had. They get Illinois at home, and following that game, they're at Purdue, the home game against Nebraska, at Indiana, at Minnesota, home game against Ohio State, at Michigan State, a home game against Penn State. Wait, that's got to be that's wrong on Big Ten because they got to be at Penn State because they already played Penn State at home, and they get they're at Illinois to finish the season. So we will see this team again. We will see them in our Big Ten finale. To steal this game in Iowa City, though, would be colossal for Illinois because just like that, not only have you exercised your demons beating, the teams on the road that you haven't won in it for so long, but Iowa's kind of lived in Illinois fans' heads for a while, especially in basketball. I mean, we saw the way Iowa shot up Illinois in the Big Ten tournament last year and also in the games they played in the regular season. And it really just has felt like a while since you felt good about going up against Iowa.
Yeah.
But it would also, I'm kind of looking past Minnesota, which this team shouldn't. But it would lengthen. It would prove that Illinois could win at ranked teams because that's the only thing they haven't done yet is they haven't won at a ranked team. They've beaten, the Michigan at home. They take care of business against Rutgers and they take care of business against other teams at home, but they haven't won at a ranked opponent with a rowdy crowd and there's no doubt that Iowa fans will show up to that Illinois game. If I had to put money on it, I would say Iowa wins this game.
Me too.
I'm curious to see how the game is played against Minnesota because the Arturu to Garza effect. Right. You see how you play against one of those better Big Tens. Because as good as Matt Harms is, I just don't think that Purdue team that it's around him is good enough to sort of really justify him being one of the better big centers in the Big Ten. Arturu definitely is. And Garza probably has that title right now with the way that he plays. Yeah. So I won't have any sort of take on this game until I see how Kofi and Georgie do against Arturu on Thursday.
I think that kind of sets up for one of them I feel like to have a really decent day. And the obvious answer is Kofi. But I feel like if Kofi is so focused on defensively holding Arturu in, like I feel like Georgie, that might open up. I don't know. My brain's trying to make weird back alley comparisons now.
Are you thinking that Garza is a better matchup for Georgie because he can step out a little bit more? Okay.
Definitely.
Then is that what you're kind of trying to say here?
Yeah, like I feel like Kofi's going to be expending a lot of energy defensively in this Minnesota game, which will allow Georgie to kind of become maybe the main cog on the block offensively among those two, and then flip-flopped really against Iowa. But it's hard to bet against. It's hard to say this Illinois team is going to lose games in the immediate future because they are on this win streak.
Yeah, but I also think this Iowa team has done some stuff this year, and I mean, like I like where you're headed with the flip flop on the defensive roles in the next 2 games, but I really want them to win against Iowa because I think that's when you see it's legit. Like they have this great Big Ten record, but as you said, they haven't beaten anybody ranked on the road, so. I think that the next stretch of games they have to play Iowa, they have to play Rutgers, they have to play Penn State. All those are away. It's going to be a real testing and proving ground, and they'll probably drop some of those. But I really hope that they can start it off well against Iowa.
We'll talk more next week when we can break down more of this. But That game against Iowa on Sunday starts a stretch of at Iowa, home against Maryland, home against Michigan State, at Rutgers, and then at Penn State. Those are all 5 ranked teams. 3 of them are on the road. You get the 2 hardest ones at home, and both of them are teams that you've seen before. But it's a really tough stretch because then you get to, and then the nice part is that you get to finish with Nebraska at home, at Northwestern, home against Indiana, which would have been a great game even if both these teams hadn't won a game yet this year because of how that rivalry is. You go at Ohio State, which maybe they're just not good this year. I don't really know what to make out of Ohio State. People still think they're going to make the tournament. They got to floor it. They got to put.
It's just going to be so hard how good the Big Ten.
Yeah,
is.
they got to really hit the gas pedal if they're going to hit the Big Ten. And then you get Iowa at home to end the year. But there is no easy stretch in the Big Ten. Right. That's an easier one. Illinois got a tougher one after this Minnesota game, but it all starts with the Minnesota game. So got to take care of business at home. Anybody have any final remarks before we go?
I've decided Iowa is in that top tier of the Big Ten. Like I think it's Michigan State, Illinois, and Iowa.
No Maryland?
Maryland has been just too up and down for me. Like
no Rutgers?
No, Rutgers is close
Yeah,
though. Like they are right at the top of that second tier though. Like they're borderline for me.
So and I asked that because right now the Big Ten is Illinois, Michigan State tied for first. Rutgers a half a game back. Maryland, and Iowa that's all the teams that are within a game. So I would agree that Maryland is too. They can't win on the road. Or no, it's Rutgers that can't win on the road.
Yeah.
Rutgers hasn't won a road Big Ten game yet. I think the top tier right now is Michigan State, Illinois, and I think I'm putting Rutgers. I think I'm putting Rutgers, Maryland, and Iowa up there. I think that if I'm
in that top tier,
yeah,
interesting.
I think I
don't blame you.
I just don't see enough separation between like Iowa and Michigan State. Whereas like the next teams on the Big Ten ranking, Indiana, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Penn State, Purdue, Ohio State, those teams all feel like middler teams, and then Michigan, Nebraska, Northwestern. Man, Michigan really is having a rough time right now. I think. Yep. Yeah, I think Illinois, Michigan State, Rutgers, Maryland, and Iowa are all my top tier, just because I think all of those teams could win the Big Ten tournament, and I don't think any other teams could. I don't think Michigan could. I don't think Ohio State could. I don't think Wisconsin or Indiana or any of the other teams that I named could. And I think I think any of those 5 teams could. So I think that's my guideline or my whatever criteria is what I'm.
I think that's completely fair. Closing thought: how do you feel after the Chris Bryant decision today?
It was expected that they would deny the league grievance. It makes him a more valuable trade piece.
True.
At the same time, I don't want them to trade Chris Bryant. At the same time, we've seen a slow off season, and the Arenado talks interest me. But at the same time, it would really bum me out if you trade Arenado and Chris Bryant, and then whatever other pieces that go in there, and then maybe you aren't the team that benefits there. Like, why swap two pretty equal third basemen when you might miss out because the pieces that you traded?
Doesn't Arenado get like an opt out after 2 years anyway?
You're in the exact same position,
right?
Yeah. Both, and actually the Cubs add more salary with that.
Right. So, I mean, the Rockies pick up like maybe 7-8 mil or something like that, right? But then the Cubs still have to pick up.
Well, the Rockies thing is that Arenado wants out, and like the Rockies feel like they could kind of be in the playoff picture, but then they're in the same exact position that they're trying to avoid, where guys in Colorado probably goes and leaves and gets signed by the Dodgers then. So it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's a weird. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the MLB offseason plays off, just because you could swap Brian and Arenado, and you're pretty much doing the same thing for either one. But then the Rockies would benefit just because they save money there. But even then, Arenado's probably a better third baseman by the slightest of margins. He's a little bit better of a hitter.
Bryant has the bigger ceiling, and overall, because he can win MVPs, and he can be like a guy that dominates the league. Arenado can do that as well. It's just that Arenado does it more consistently on a more consistent basis because Bryant's dealt with injuries and so on and so forth. But
I also wonder with Arenado playing in Coors Field if the numbers are
his
there.
Numbers on the road are actually not that much different.
Then I'm not concerned. But right now, Chris Bryant's the Cub, and I'm happy with that, and I hope that stays that way for a long time. But I also understand that sports are a business at times.
Yep, sure.
But yeah, that'll do it for our show. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to check out tomorrow's show. Going to be a kind of a hodgepodge show because of the game that's going on and people that have obligations and whatnot. And also the game's going on during the show. So make sure to check it out, though. Should be interesting. And thank you so much for listening on behalf of Alex, Brendyn, Jake, and myself. Have a nice day. And Alex, hit the music.